Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the only always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor immediately after running through the sprinkler in his front yard. It was refreshing. Today I'm going to be reviewing an album by Sofia Portanet. Now I don't know if I should be pronouncing her name Portanet or Portanet, I can't tell if it's French, but the name of the album is in German, Freier, Geist, which means free ghost. And as always on this show, I am a language professor, that is my actual job, not this hobby. And one of the things I often say, and I really mean, is that we have to fight English language colonialism. And there's many ways of doing that. The best way is to become bilingual and not just assume that the whole world is going to speak English. But another thing to do is to expose yourself intentionally to music that is not in English. Unlike cinema, which can be subtitled, music has a different barrier. It's very hard to listen to music in other languages. Yet, the rest of the world has no problem doing so when they listen to our music. So I actually think it is a moral imperative that we try to listen to music in other languages. And not just sort of exotic languages, which is a weird racist term, and not things that are like, ooh, I never thought I'd hear this, but banal languages, like French or Italian or German. Anything which emphasizes the fact that the English language does not and should not have a stranglehold on creativity. Let's experience what the world experiences by listening to some German music. Now, of course, this German music is also often in English. It's an album that's half in English, half in German, with one song in French. And it's interesting, right? Because it's part of what makes German music fascinating, is when you look at the German new wave of the 80s, Die Neue Welle, I believe is how you say it, that music, it's often credited with the German language helping to form the sound of the music, the kind of piercing tones of German, the lots of syllables and long words actually forming different sounds. And I think that's a good argument to be made. I mean, an opera in German is very different than an opera in Italian because of the way that vowels and syllables are pronounced. And so in a way, the accent or the language itself is the driver of German new wave music. And this album by Sofia Portanet is very much in that realm. I will say that when I think about Germany and I think about German music, I grew up outside of Boston, and I used to go to the video store, and I would always rent movies. I would rent German movies by Werner Herzog and Wim Wenders, in particular from the 70s. And this was a different German New Wave. This was German New Wave cinema. And it's funny because in my life, I've met a lot of Germans, and I have met zero Germans who want to talk to me about the 1970s cinema of either Herzog or Wim Wenders. Now, there's a lot of theories about that this is the lost generation that grew up whose parents were with the Nazis, and so Germany has a very complicated relationship to this movie and this cinema. I don't know what it is, but it drives me crazy because I loved, especially the cinema of Wim Wenders. He made these road movies like King of the Road and Alice in the Cities, and he made these movies where like it was an imitation of American road movies, but it'd just be these like lone figures driving all the way across Germany in this epic road trip. So when I was in my early 20s, I went on an epic road trip across Germany. The problem is this: if you're from America, like I am, and you've driven across the United States of America, all 3,000 miles, 5,000 kilometers, if you have done that 20 times as I have, a road trip across Germany is not much. It takes like a day and a half. But still, I had this romantic vision of driving across Germany. And what I did was I tried to only listen to music that was from Germany in that time, to try to expand my mind. And coincidentally, or not coincidentally, the way that I see the music of Sofia Portanet, and again, she actually was raised partly in Paris, so I'm just going to say Portanet, because that sounds more French. And even her cover, the album cover, I think she looks very much like Anna Karina from a Godard movie, a different new wave. We have three new waves being mentioned here: French New Wave cinema, German New Wave cinema, German New Wave music. But while I was there, I actually bought CDs, and I thought they were the same person for a long time. They're not. I bought a CD by Nina Hagen and a CD by Nena. And I think, now I'm going to say this, my ignorance is profound. I don't know very much about Die Neue Welle. I don't know much about German New Wave music. I imagine that Sofia Portanet's music is much more based on other things that I don't know because my knowledge is so shallow. But that being said, I think, at least the way I hear this music, is very comfortably in between these two artists. She's a lot like Nina Hagen in the way that it's vocally based. Her music is insanely vocally acrobatic. She goes high, she goes low, she's completely theatrical, completely wild, but also with a kind of like raw strength. Reminds me also of Blondie in that way, just like a strength to the voice of just somebody that you, just by their voice, they are intimidatingly strong. Nina Hagen and Sofia Portanet also have that. But then sonically, it reminded me of this album by Nina. If you don't know Nina, you know 99 Red Balloons, 99 Luftballon, which is in English and in German in the original track listing. And in a way, it reminds me of this because it has that feeling of, hey, this is accessible music for you in English, and I'll just sing this in English too. Most of the tracks on this album that I could find are available in English and in German. But the English versions all have a weird lack of rhyme, a weird sort of lack of strength to them. And I think, as intrepid members of the globe, we need to actually just focus on the German versions of this music. But sonically, it has that feeling. If I had to describe her music in general, it would really just be in that way of, if you like 80s new wave music in general, strong synthesizers, drum machines, like guitar is often used as an accent as opposed to a driving force, although it's both. It's very much in that 80s new wave soundscape. But it's not really self-consciously so. I don't feel like she's trying to be funny or cute. I feel like this is just the music that she listens to, and she wants to make music in that style. As I've often said, the 1980s have lasted at least 3 times as long as the 1980s. So let me kind of go through track by track here before I run out and jump back into the sprinkler. I'm going to play you a sample. Actually, I'm going to skip to my favorite song, track 3, Wanderrad. I don't know much German, by the way, so I apologize. Here's all the German I know. 20 Zigaretten. Ich bin auf der Autobahn. Wo bist du, Katja? That's about it. Those are all the words I learned. But this song is based on what I was able to find in my 5 minutes of research. There is an English version, and it says Wandering Rat. It's apparently based on a Goethe poem, because of course it is. But I want you to hear this sort of like very cool atmosphere that she sends. I'm going to start playing you a part that's after the first verse, and there's a little keyboard interlude, just a little instrumental interlude with a nice little lead melody line, and just you get a sense of the strength of the voice and the catchiness and the atmosphere that she is able to set. It is really just wonderful. The more I listened to this, the more I liked it. So let's listen to a little bit of Wanderrad by Sofia Portanet. I'll pronounce it that way this time. Play. So that gives you an idea of the strength of her voice, not so much the range, which if you listen to basically any other song on the album, you will hear. In particular, a track called Planet Mars. The vocals on this song are maybe the most insane vocals I have ever heard. Every single line starts really high and then goes down low. And it has this constant descending feature to it. But then at a certain point it goes so high, I can't even, my dog's whining can't even imitate how high it goes. I played it for my daughter. I said, what do you think? She's like, well, I think it's fine for auto-tune. I'm like, das ist keine auto-tune. This is not auto-tune. This is straight up amazing singing. Semi-operatic, really give if you just want to hear, just do that. That's my suggestion. If you just want to hear something crazy, listen to the chorus of Planet Mars. So theatrical. This is what really reminded me of what some of Nina Hagen does. Not Nina Hagen-Dazs, bad ice cream. This song's interesting too, Planet Mars, because it actually has, the guitars are almost like Devo, like just really accented, and it's very bass-led. And then even at points it sounds kind of B-52-ish. There is a certain amount to which it feels like she's having fun. It's a serious album, but it's also a little bit fun, a little bit kind of winking. So I've jumped ahead to a couple of the later tracks. It opens up with a track called Free Ghost, which is the translation version of a song that she's already apparently released in German. But this announces the tone of the album, just how upfront the vocals are. The next track, Menschen und Macht, has a nice kind of New Order style guitar singing in German. And this is where I would say she has the most subtle acrobatics in the voice. Like if you just listen to it, you don't have to like pay attention to what she's doing vocally, but when you do, and I really recommend listening to this album on headphones, when you do hear what she's doing, it is astounding. The amount of range and movement that she has to her voice. As far as the rest of the album, we have Van der Rat, then we have a track called Das Kind, which I believe means the kid, the child. And that's where you see the talent that she has at moving around in the melody. Like any great singer, she has this ability to just keep moving, and if you're not paying attention, you won't notice how far she's going. And this is interesting too, because she actually hits some minor discordant notes in the chorus, which she doesn't always do. Then that Planet Mars song that I was talking about, just you know what? I'm gonna risk it. I'm gonna risk the copyright goblins. If there's a break here of 10 seconds, that means that the copyright goblins got me, and they're taking away this song from me. But I want to actually play you Planet Mars, just the chorus, just so you can hear how insane it is. That's not it. No, 1 second. Here we go. No goblins, no goblins. Right? Oh, I hope the goblins didn't get me. So, that gives you an idea of that just insanity. And I've listened to a lot of music. I listen to like 30 albums a week, at least. I don't hear stuff like this very often. Next track, Vargre, means Libra. It just annoyed me that it was about an astrological sign, so I'm not going to review it. Next track, Art Deco, is actually very guitar-led, kind of like sliding back and forth between fifths, and it's about being a possession, kind of a feminist song. There's a track called Ringe, which is a ballad, which is nice as well, because we have the album sort of ends with sort of more downbeat songs, which hint a little bit more of like a deeper emotion, a little bit less woo insanity. And then it ends with a track called Racine, which is a cover of a song by someone named Catherine Ribeiro. So she's French, but she's from Portugal. A great sort of alternative folk figure from the 70s. It's great seeing Catherine Ribeiro's music like out there, and she sings in French, which is so good, it's very clear that she lived in France. The way that she pronounces her R's, I actually want to play this for my students. Like, this is how you pronounce R's. It's just this lush and beautiful outro to the song. So there's my review. My weirdly rambling review, but I think in the end, I hope that you have the interest in listening to this album. It really is great. It captures a lot of what made this music interesting without just feeling like a retread. It's moving forward. I think the way I'm going to title this video is, it's the new, old, new wave. So it's the new wave of the old new wave. And it's good. Das ist sehr gut. Even more German. Okay, well, for Rüdiger Vogler and the rest of my German heroes, there's the camera.